in our church, behind the table, and you will find every single color in this ornament. And it's to remind you of Bower Hill Church, but it's also to remind you that we are hoping to keep growing. And that's what this is like a tree of life. And for us, it's for Bower Hill. So that's your gift for this evening. And also, I want to do something else, and I can't remember what. Oh, yes, I want to introduce my co-chairs. And the first one is Teresa Child, standing right in the middle. And, thank you, Teresa. And also give you a little history. Her grandmother, am I correct?
My grandfather, but he's passed away, and then Gloria is also my great aunt.
It's a great aunt, it's a great everything. They have a great family, and they have most of that table over there. And anyway, this is Gloria Julian, right?
Right.
She was Julia Charnel.
And she also married my grandfather.
And she was married to your grandfather. And she was number 36 on the original roster, or the original membership, the charter members. So that family has a history here. She is alive, she's the longest living member that we know of from the charter membership list, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And her daughter, Linda, is...
Oh, and her daughter, Linda, please stand up, Linda. Thank you for being here. Teresa's my guide right now. I just follow whatever she says. I would also like you to meet our other co-chair, and I know him very well because I live with him. And I think you might know Dave Hicks, but he is the longest continuous living member of Bower Hill Community Church. Now, you know how old he is, I'll tell you later. Or I'll leave that alone. I have also some people I would like to introduce. We are very lucky that at Bower Hill we have roommates. And these roommates had a church, and their church just happened to be flooded. And they couldn't use this church anymore. So somehow we heard about it, and because Bower Hill is one of the most giving and caring churches I've ever been in, we invited them to use some space for a while. Well, that space for a while has been 8 years. They're right back there, there's a whole table in there. This has been a wonderful roommate figuration. We have worked it out, we love it, and we're very happy about them being with us. Thank you for coming too. They're part of our church. And then we come to this guy named Bill Barker, and he started the church. And his wife, Jean, who just passed away about a year ago, she was in our church for many years after. They had left and she came back. And anyway, you hear all about Bill, but I think you're going to hear some good stories about Jean, because she was marvelous. And also Bill was best friends with Mr. Rogers. Who can beat that for a friend? You just can't beat it. Anyway, we're so happy that their 2 children are here. Ellen, please stand up, Ellen. Their daughter, and Jock, their son. Ellen lives in Denver, and Jock lives somewhere in Pittsburgh, I don't know where. But we're so glad that they're here to join us, and I'm sure they'll tell some good stories in a little while. Now I want to go to some thank yous. Well, first of all, if I stood here and named all the people that deserve thank yous in this room, we'd be here, well, you can be here till 11, right? No problem. We'll skip it. You thought it was serious. Anyway, I want to thank many people, and I have picked a few, but I want you to know that there are so many people that make something like this happen. And not just tonight, but tomorrow, and plus we've had 2 big events this past year, so this has been going on since September. I'm just about partied out, so this has to be the end sometime. But anyway, I want you to think about this past year at least. And I want you to think for a second of anything you have done for the church. You brought a casserole, you helped somebody get a ride, you have been on any committee in church, you have done anything during the service, you sing in the choir, whatever it is you have done in the last year, I would like you to raise your hand. Come on, don't be shy because I know who you are.
What about praying for the church?
We're going to get to that.
Oh, okay.
Now, I want you to look around the room and see how many hands are up. This is a good group. This is my kind of group. Anyway, and how many of you, not even having physically done anything, have at all had a prayer for the church? See, Teresa, I didn't forget. Anyway, I'm sure all of you in this room have done that at one point in time. So this is an important evening. I want you to enjoy yourself, and I know we're going to have a nice evening. And you pastors who are speaking, I have a hook right back here, just in case. And now it's my honor. Well, first of all, let me introduce, no, they'll be introduced later. They're going to have to wait. But it is my honor to introduce our pastor, the Reverend Reverend Dr. Brian Snyder.
With all the many thanks that we gave, did we think to thank Susan? Did we? The 75th anniversary team has done so much work for all of the festivities leading up to this, and we're very grateful. I'm going to save my best and my most clever and my most entertaining remarks for the end of the program so that we can go ahead and eat. And we're going to go ahead and pray now, so let's pray. God of life around us, within us, you have been our dwelling place in all generations. We give you thanks for each other. We give you thanks for this time that we share. Especially, we give you thanks for the 75 years in which we have witnessed to our kind of faith, the kind of faith that you have planted in us. We give you thanks for all those who have made it what it is, Bower Hill Church, and for those who keep it going today. We ask that you would bless this time, bless this food, and let it all be to your glory. In Christ we pray. Amen.
Thank you, John. Well, he just saved more minutes for other people talking, so this is working out well. My friend, where's Carol? She is back there. In fact, Carol told me that she was married in Bower Hill Church many years ago. Her last name was Flood. So if you remember the last name Flood, she was married in our church. You may have known her. Anyway, she's the director, and she is going to point out, they wanted me to do it. I'm not pointing out to anybody's table in this room. I don't want that problem. She's going to do that. She will tell you when you come up the buffet. And the buffet is both sides, so it should go pretty quickly. In the meantime, if you still need to get drinks, please do so. Move around, talk. It's a free-for-all here. All right? Enjoy.
Starting next. We'll be last.
You have been watching these slides because it's so memorable to see so many things. And you've probably seen your picture many times too. All right, first of all, it is my honor and privilege to introduce our first pastor who's going to speak to us this evening. And I have a quick story about him. When I first started coming to Bower Hill Church with David Hicks, I decided I would join. I used to be Lutheran. So I talked to Jack Hodges, and he said to me, I said I would like to join the church. And he said, usually you have to go and meet with him several times. And he said, well, he said, are you going to get married to Dave Hicks? And I said, yes. And he said, you're in. Done. In and done. That was my whole interview with Jack Hodges. I would like to introduce Jack Hodges. By the way, they're here from Oregon, right? You came from Oregon?
Well,
Oh, you tell it.
yeah, why don't I say that? Okay, that story that she told could not be true. Because I'm a very verbal guy, and to have it all wrapped up in 2 words, you're in, simply does not work. Those of you who know. I really am in Baltimore. I am currently serving a church right now, Babcock Presbyterian Church. Do you know the hymn? This is my Father's world, and to my listening ears. Babcock wrote that. Yeah, and he was, in his way, quite a guy. So, what do you want me to say? Oh, a couple of incidences, Brian said this, a couple of incidences about the church. Fond memories. Fond memories, that's very nice. How lovely that is. Okay, fond memory number 1, and it has to do with light. The windows in the sanctuary were disintegrating. They were literally rotting away, which fascinatingly enough is exactly what's happening to the colonial structure at Bower Hill Community Presbyterian Church, not Bower Hill. Babcock, too many B's. Those of us who are dyslexic get very confused. And so I remember that whole process of looking for somebody who was going to handle those windows. And I remember all of the windows in, and I remember just after the windows came in, there was a snowstorm Sunday morning. It was fabulous to be able to look out and to see that was just terrific. Second memory, there is a cove of fluorescent lights around the upper perimeter of the sanctuary. Those lights were blowing out. They'd been there who knows how long. Maybe since the founding of the congregation. You could speak to that later on today. And so we went through the whole process of getting brand new lights. And so the lights, beautiful, great. The windows, beautiful, great. The church, beautiful, great.
Your picture was just on.
Really?
Yeah.
I should have stood in front of it.
You did.
I did. Oh, good. Did I block it?
I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No. I've actually, Brian was very specific as to how much time I should take. A few more minutes?
Yes. I have the hook. He doesn't.
Oh,
It's
okay.
tomorrow you can't talk as long.
Oh dear.
Oh, dear.
And I have more to say tomorrow, Brian. We'll have to go out for a beer afterwards and talk. I'll buy. you know. At this current point, I continue on, and I, as I said to somebody, am like the cowboy who is going to ride into the sunset. And behind the cowboy is a little kid saying, "Shane, come back, Shane, come back." Just because I enjoy what I'm doing. And I enjoy the people that I'm with. And the church is not huge, but it is blessedly progressive. And it is also blessedly community-minded. Now, what are
That's it?
well, yeah.
Oh, I'm so surprised.
Well, this is, I was taken with the "you're in." And I said, how am I going to match that? Let me say one other thing. Let me just ask Diane to stand up,
Yes.
if you would, Diane. Let me just say, I'm terribly fond of Bower Hill Community Church. I am terribly fond of the amount of time that I spent there. I am terribly fond of the people that I interacted with. And I'm terribly fond of the program and the ministry and the activities that we had. Oh, one last one.
Oh, please. You have time.
Okay, if you remember, we had Lenten suppers. And those Lenten suppers were, the food was free. And I bamboozled the staff into making the gourmet macaroni. And we're talking gourmet macaroni. There were maybe about 200 people at this little event. Fellowship Hall was quite full. And the gourmet macaroni, Joe, oh God, Joe.
Raycor?
What?
Just?
Can't hear you, Diane. Joan Humphrey. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. After, and Joan Humphrey said, well, what makes it gourmet? And I said, Joan, we put a sprig of parsley on the top. I will say this, following my service, whenever I came to Pittsburgh, Joan, Clark Vestal, and I mean, the three of us would always get together. We felt that we had a staff that was more fun. And the other thing is, I still get calls from David Jerkoff. So it's just been a great time, and now I have absolutely used all of my time. No more. The microphone goes back to you with my thanks.
Okay, thank you. Such a great guy. And Diane, yeah, it's wonderful having you with us too. The joy is ours. Definitely ours. And next, I just met this guy today, and I've heard so much about him, but I haven't heard enough. And so I would like to please introduce Bob Heppenstall.
This is kind of like preaching, so I brought my book, and I also brought the message I got from Brian. It says something to the effect, here it is, 4 to 5 minutes. However, my 2 associate pastors when I was here Tracy Keenan and Dan Rift have given me their time. I want to say, first of all, greetings from my wife Patrice, who wishes she could be here but could not. I also extend greetings from Tracy Keenan, who is home with her husband, and they're doing some medical battles right now. And a guy that you might not know, but David knew his father, Sandy McConnell, who's a son of this church, who is a retired Presbyterian pastor in Dayton, Ohio. His father, Bruce McConnell, was on the team that built, and all of them send their blessings and greetings to you on this anniversary. Do you remember growing up? Here's what we did. Didn't you do this with your kids? Here's the look inside. See, some things never change in the church. But the truth is, the church is the people. I served a church in New England. They didn't call it church. They called it the meeting house, because that's where the church gathered. And when I thought about tonight and a couple of memories, I want to tell you about people. I don't want to tell you about what I'm doing or what you should do. I want to tell you about some people. And some of you will remember them, and some of you will go, who is that? But enjoy it for a minute. I remember Barbara Webb, who was the chair of the search committee, along with Rick Jacobs and others that brought me here. And when I got here, they put this newlywed couple into a house, and they did what they called pounding the pastor. And everybody came to our door and brought a pound of something. Pound of popcorn, pound of something else. So if Brian ever leaves, which may never be so, remember how to pound the pastor. It was a lot of fun, a great memory. Ruth Foltz will always be in my heart and mind as our ultimate real estate agent who was able to sell us a house twice. Bob and Mary Helen Stevens, some of you might remember them. Our friendship continued past the church, and we used to go and visit with them up in Michigan at their little cottage, what they called Heidebeck, for their 3 daughters, Heidi, Debbie, and Becky. Mary Lou Oberlin. Does anybody remember Mary Lou Oberlin? She was the receptionist. She was up at Twin Towers, and she shook her head. She saw this young couple. Patty and I were out in the backyard throwing a softball back and forth in the churchyard. Mary Lou was shaking her head. What in the world did they find now? I don't know. I want to remember the Bridges family tonight. Bob and Joan were very gracious in sharing their cabin up in the Laurel Highlands with the youth groups, and their daughter Beth was on the search committee that brought me there, a youth representative, and they had 2 twin boys. The 2 twin boys were named Brad and Kirk Bridges, and their nicknames were the Sons of Thunder. I'd never known anybody to cheat on a communicants class exam, but you never know. I saw Jim Burke today. Jim, where are you? Jim's over there. I remember Jim coming in, taking some photographs of me in the sanctuary, none of which appeared tonight, but we put together a brochure. We made it look pretty good. And Paul Frock was the guy who helped me learn how to put together a bulletin and do that each week. I don't know if you remember Doris Fulton, but Doris Fulton, every week that we had communion, would prepare shortbread for the communion, and she'd bake it in her home. And there's a line drawing that used to have on the front of the church was Patty's, and underneath it, it said, "A city set upon a hill cannot be hidden," which is still true of the church today. I remember Ann Sessa and Claudia Benak singing a duet of P.A. Jesu on Sundays, and it was gorgeous. Or Norm and Shirley Kershaw, who taught me the Bower Hill way to do Maundy Thursday's Tenebrae service, and I took that way with me every church that I ever served. A beautiful, beautiful service was their tradition. I know what happened, Jack. Where's Jack? I know what happened to the windows, Jack. I don't know if you all remember a wonderful man named Ed Campbell. Ed had in his front yard a huge pine tree, and he insisted that we cut that thing down and put it up in the front of the church during the Christmas season. And it was so big that we had to use like a ram. We had to ram it down the center aisle, and then when we had to take it off, they took a chainsaw and they cut it in pieces and threw it out one of those windows. So now I know what happened to those windows, Jack. I remember Bob Grabo and Holly Child, who were the Mutt and Jeff of the building committee. They were a two-person tag team. They taught me how to be unafraid of heights and took me up to the top of that steeple once, not more than once. And I remember Bob's wife, Jean, who declared to Bob once he was retired, "I married you for better or for worse, but not for lunch. Get out of here." I remember Eleonora and Harvey May. Harvey May and his brothers each built the house for the other brother. They built it themselves by hand. Does anybody remember a woman named Helen Wright in the church, an older woman? Thank you, Mary Good. She used to get on the bus and she would take it into the children's hospital and she would rock the babies. Helen Wright. L.T. Guess, who was secreted away because he was working on a government project that turned out to be radar and they didn't want anybody to figure out who to get to. And Ursula Pappas. Ursula and Mike lived right across the street and she gave the furniture that was all into the, I don't know if it's still there, I haven't been in the office in a while, but gave all the office furniture to the church in memory of her husband after he passed. Do you remember George Rose? George Rose was trying to hang up his Christmas decorations and the hanging of the greens, and he had cookies that had, I think, been in when Bill Barker was there from 1951, trying to keep them intact each year. I remember Thursday morning Bible studies with Lynn Foltz and Dan Zabo and Truman Coleman all gathered up in the friendship room and others. Remember playing euchre with the young adults? I still don't know how to do that. I do remember Dave Hicks and Greg Findlay and a few others, members of what we called the Hill. That was our softball team. We played, that's what could be said. We were kind of the Pirates of our league. But I will tell you that Dave was behind the infamous, I think infamous, fundraiser, Men in Drag. We had all the men were parading around in drag. I came out as Roberta that night. That was not all the photographs of that have been destroyed and are no longer available. I remember Ed Eaton organizing the Horizon-eers at the Valleybrook Club, and I think some of those little drawings that are over there are from Ed's time. I remember how when we had our first child, Patty was surrounded by love of this church and the women who gathered and had her very first baby shower, and she treasured that moment for a lifetime. I remember how Rick Jacobs stood with us alongside us with his choir robe on, came out of the choir and held the water for the baptism of our children. I remember the buckeye tree that was behind the kitchen and how my son got on his plastic three-wheeler and rode it viciously down into the church parking lot. Great memories. I remember a woman named Dottie Diffenderfer. Dottie was a sweet lady. Dottie took our two young children, they were both born at Bower Hill, the two youngest, took them once a week to her house so my wife would have a day off from being a mom and could relax. What a kind woman. I remember a woman named Carol Knox. Carol had a side hustle, breakfast in bed. And her business was she would take breakfast, well, she had to pay for it, but you take breakfast in bed. And so I decided to do that for my wife for her birthday. My wife's birthday was on April the 1st. She's an April Fool's Day. Beautiful breakfast spread, pineapple right there. Unfortunately, one of Carol's children decided the family prank would be to change the salt and the sugar. And there was salt all over that. Carol was just nonplussed about it. But a great memory nonetheless. I could go on and I won't, but I wanted to bring these people back to you tonight because that's what the church really is. It's people like you doing exactly what you're doing, caring for one another, building community, making a difference, allowing the love of Jesus Christ to be in your hearts and in your minds and in your service to others. So I wrote a little something. This is my last thing, and then I save the rest for tomorrow, Brian. When I come to Pittsburgh, it's not too long a drive. It was 4.5. It's like coming home to me because I grew up in Pittsburgh, and certainly this is the place where we were that's our first church that we served together. We've been together 43 years now. And I wrote this with you all in mind, and tonight I'll share it with you. The writers say you can never go home again, and of course they're right. But perhaps you can visit once in a while. Visit and let the old memories come alive, if only briefly. Let their stories wash over you with their reminders of what once was. Some stories may be hard to look at or painful to recall, but while these have their place in your life lessons, you set them aside on your visit. And you let the other side win the day. The laughter of your own childhood, the baseball, the bike, the brother, the friendships now long slipped by, a neighbor, a night under the stars, a choir, a first kiss. You remember the kindness and it comes pouring through. Meals shared, hurts healed through listening, forgiveness and encouragement received. And so many seemingly small moments, a beer at the bar, a hymn that made you cry, a child opening Christmas, a hug goodnight. And when you open that door, there is no closing it, and the visit becomes a flood of joy. No, the writers are right. You cannot go home again, but you can visit and remember and be blessed. And perhaps it will dawn upon you that you will someday be a memory that others will visit. And hopefully they will feel as blessed as you feel right now. God bless you, Bower Hill.
Wow, I don't remember half of those people and I have tears in my eyes. Anyway, the next person I would like to have come up, now we can take Lori or Leonard, or they can tag team. But I like, oh good, Lori's coming up because I want her to know I still make your tortellini soup. It's the easiest recipe and the best. So here's Lori Sponica.
Hello to those of you I know and those I have yet to meet. It is quite something to be looking at the photos and to think that it was 24 years ago that Leonard and I came to be the pastors at Bower Hill, 2002. We came with a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, which was quite something. And I remember the days of 2002 to 2009 where they're being particularly challenging. In part because, as you may recall, that was one of the times in the church life when decline was quite significant, where children and youth were especially being pulled and tugged in so many directions, and so many of our working families were really struggling with the ability or capacity to volunteer or be in church. So I remember that, but I also remember at the same time how faithful the church was. How many opportunities that we found together to serve. I remember during that same period of time how we had our first Be the Church Day, an event where we had so many more people than we expected coming together to do projects around the community, and also doing some outreach and showing up in places to show people that the church was just not in a building, but also outside of the building. I remember with joy so many of our spectacular Vacation Bible School events where we would transform the entire youth hallway and have these spectacular snacks and activities, and just whoever showed up, it was enough, and we had so much fun together. I also remember during that time we created something called the Hunger Action Team, or HAT. And we found some opportunities to go out and serve, and the one that sticks the most in my mind was we were thinking about going out to serve at the Washington City Mission, and thought about when we might do that, and of course Thanksgiving came up, and then the thought was, by this gracious and generous group of people, let's not go on Thanksgiving, because everybody does. Let's go on Christmas Day. And so we started our first time going down to Christmas Day, and I remember thinking maybe we'll get like 5, 10 people who families have grown up, and instead we had 25 that showed up that first day. And what was even more special was, as part of the planning, we decided to bring something special for dessert, and we invited the congregation to make pies. And I still remember the tears in the eyes of those who got to choose which pie they ate. Because there's one thing I remember, it is all of you as wonderful cooks. And those pies were spectacular and they were memorable, and those folks who came to eat that day were brought to tears remembering when their mother made the pumpkin pie or the apple pie that their grandmother used to make for them, and it brought such hope. So my hope and my prayer for you at this, your 75th, is that you continue to find ways to be the church that you are, with the talents you have, the gifts you have, and to share those within your community and also beyond, which is part of your DNA. Blessings to you in the next chapter.
Thank you, Leonard. Well, guess who's next? Okay, Leonard. You have to come up here. This is a guy that is the most caring person. He gives the best hugs, and he left us and went to hospice care to help other people next door to our church. And that's a really good thing to do. Thank you.
Leonard.
Well, thanks for dinner. It was lovely. But I didn't come out here for the food, although, as I just said, it was very good. I came out here, got on a plane all the way from Oregon because I wanted to take the opportunity to see how you are. And I've so enjoyed the conversations. It has been delightful and meaningful. I have 2 illustrations for you to make one point. So, first one, when I was here on Tuesday mornings, I think, some men got together for coffee and conversation. And we talked about all manner of things. Sometimes we read a book, sometimes we had donuts, mostly we just talked about things. There were 2 men in that group. You'll remember both of them probably. Chan Ketchum, one of the great liberal lions of the church, and Don Lamb. And the Lambs came down from Canada, and that's an important fact. And this was about 22 years ago, so what was in the air was health care reform. It wasn't quite the Affordable Care Act or Obamacare, but it was in the air that we needed as a country to do something about health care. And Chan Ketchum was all over that. And he very much wanted a particular thing to happen. So we would talk about health care a lot. And invariably, Chan would look over to Don, who was from Canada, and say, you know, like single-payer health care in Canada. And Don, with no rancor or anything, would just say, well, it's great if you don't need anything. And Chan would look crestfallen because he so badly wanted Don to endorse his view. I, as a skilled pastor, just sat back and sort of watched the children play. Next illustration. It was Sunday morning, regular worship, and if you remember, and I'll experience it maybe tomorrow, at the end of worship, most of you come down the center aisle and you say something pleasant to the pastor, and then you go get your cookie and coffee, right? Probably happen tomorrow. Well, I remember a particular Sunday just before we as a nation invaded Iraq. And I had taken the time and trouble to prepare a sermon about that, and I concluded that invading Iraq would be sinful and took a stand against it. And worship ended, and not as many people came down the center aisle. But one person in particular stomped down the aisle. It was very dramatic. And he got to me, he went and shook my hand, and he said very loudly, "You and Chamberlain," and he stomped off. What those two stories have in common is one of your strengths, something that's part of your DNA that has been very helpful, is you're a group of people who are capable of not just strong opinions, that's at the very least, but you have been capable about carrying things that matter, that make a difference. And that has helped you along, and that has helped you to be faithful. And that's the thing I remember most about you. So keep at it. God bless you.
Thank you, Leonard. And next, I would like to bring up the dynamic duo. They both said that they would come up here, even though they don't like to talk a lot, but I want them to, because you're going to love some of their stories. This is Jean and Bill Barker's daughter, Ellen Brutsch, and did I say that right? Oh, it's close. Oh, it's Austrian or something. And Jock, John Barker. Welcome them, please.
I'm the one you don't know, by the way. 25 years ago, Bob Heppenstall called me and said, "Will you preach at our church?" "I'm bringing back all the sons of the church." I told Bob, "I'm not a son of the church." But he said, "Well, I'd like to have you back anyway." So really, 25 years ago in 1 month, I preached there. Afterwards, a gentleman asked me, "Why are you here?" I said, "Well, Heppenstall wanted a vacation Sunday, but you know, I think I'm here because of name recognition." And he went, "What?" And I said, I grew up here. I'm John Barker, Bill Barker's son, and the poor guy looked absolutely befuddled. So, I'm here to prove a couple of things. One, I exist. And I think maybe I have a place at the church. Now, like all good lawyers, I'm going to take a moment and say, not only do you have to accept my testimony, I have documented proof. Mom very carefully assembled a baby book. Exhibit A. For those of you in the back row, yes, she was kind enough to put Raggedy Ann on the front. But nonetheless, on the third page, there is a cradle roll certificate that says that John Barker is enrolled in the cradle roll of Bower Hill Church. It is signed by the superintendent of the Sunday schools, a man by the name of Elmer Lombard, whose name escapes me, but we seem to be throwing names out tonight, so hopefully someone remembers. And the superintendent of the department, Helen Wright, whom we knew very, very well. Also, 4 pages back from that is a baptismal certificate that says little John Barker was baptized at Bower Hill Presbyterian Church, the son of Reverend William P. Barker and Jean Cotton Barker. December 24th, 1951. So I think I have a place at the church. Makes me feel a lot better because how many times I walked around there on days Presbytery met, and one of your nice volunteers would say, "Are you lost, sir?" And I so wanted to say, "I know this place better than you do, trust me." But I couldn't do that. Now, we've been asked to comment about our years there, so I'll take you back to the Quonset hut. Obviously, you've probably surmised I'm the older one of the siblings here. I do have memories of the Quonset hut. I remember as a young man crawling through the keyhole of my dad's desk, watching things that took place. I also remember crawling under the pews after worship. My most vivid memory perhaps is after church, and if you look at some of the pictures, you'll notice there's not much of a narthex there. So Dad tended to stand outside on the front there and shook hands and greeted people. He didn't have a coat. He wore a black cape like Count Dracula. I was under that cape, visiting with people. And of course, the most vivid memory I carry is that at the ripe age of 4 years old, I decided to wander off from our house on Willow Drive to go and visit my dad. I'm walking up Parkview Drive. 4 years old, remember now. Fortunately, high school had let out. A number of your high school students were kind enough to escort little John Barker back home, whereupon Mom opened up a can of whoop-ass and let me know that you don't go and visit your dad. At 4 years old. Well, this brings us up then to innumerable trips riding in our old Ford Fairlane up to the Claddy farm. I was vehemently against any church redevelopment. I'm going to tell you that right up front, because I loved the Claddy farm. As Bob mentioned, there were buckeye trees everywhere. A kid's dream. There was a miniature golf course that ran down over the hill where your present sanctuary is. Pheasants, all kinds of wildlife there. And I tried to point out all those natural wonders that should be preserved. But D. Hicks, Carter, Joe Finley, and a host of other people prevailed. And what you know as the Fellowship Hall was erected. Obviously, my most vivid memory of that is worship. Friday night or Saturdays were spent setting up folding chairs, getting hymn books out. Dad didn't know much about child labor laws at the time, and it was all hands on deck. Also, for those of you particularly in the back, worship was a lot different then, folks. Women wore white gloves and hats, and we wore suits. Most of us kids grew up with hand-me-downs. Remember, World War II had just ended for the most part there. Buzzy Myers, I think, clothed me until I was in high school. There were no such things as people wearing Steeler jerseys to church. But we also had fun. I think my sister and I remember every other Friday we got bounced around to Charlie and Helen Wright's house because it was either B4s or Beavers were meeting. How many of you remember those? Yeah. See, some of us do go back, yeah. Those were the groups for either under 40s or over 40s. Women had bazaars. I love those things. My first camera came from there. And my sister bought a white horse saddle. Do you remember? Yeah. Why? I don't know. But that bazaar was a source of all kinds of fun. Every Tuesday I was in there, we had Boy Scouts, Troop 28. 60-some kids when I was there, 4 patrols. Every year we cranked out at least 1 or 2 Eagle Scouts. I know when I received my Eagle Scout, there were 3 of us that night. Is Troop 28 still around?
Yeah.
Great. Great. We had other activities. As the years went by, youth group. We developed a program called Celtics. Some of you remember that? Trampolines. in the sanctuary, what you know as the fellowship hall. Some of you probably can't even fathom the thought that up in what is the balcony there of the fellowship hall were 2 pool tables. For me growing up, Saturday afternoon was rounds of 8-ball with my dad up there. If you didn't know Bill Barker, he was very, very good at pool. Probably a product of his misspent youth, but nonetheless, very good. I also remember Mrs. Bradley. For some of you, that's a name unfamiliar, but she and the Bradleys were the African-American folk from Sewickley that catered innumerable dinners at the church. My God, that woman made fried chicken that I have never, ever experienced since then. But that crew would come hustling in there and provide all kinds of wonderful food. Then, of course, there were the infamous dances. The church decided to reach out after football games on Friday evenings. Dad pulled more of his hair out from those things as people were unhappy. It was noisy, protests. I'm sure you get this in the history books as well. Lots and lots of trouble, but typical of the outreach of the church. Because by then, Bower Hill had set a precedent. You worked hard to incorporate the Jewish community into Mount Lebanon. You worked hard to build a relationship with other faiths. You worked hard to reach out in mission projects. How many trips did I make with Dad to the Cave Boys Club, to Bidwell's Church, to a host of other ministries? To this day, I look back with some regret and say, Dad, I had my uncle's Lionel train. Now, this was one of those big bumpers, yay big. It didn't work, but Dad decided we didn't need it. So it went to the Cave Boys Club. That would have put my 4 kids through school, I'm sure, by now. But such was his outlook and mission and what we needed to do. That branched into the mission projects where Ellen and I got encouraged to go to Puerto Rico, encouraged to go to Southeast Asia. And then once we were there, we were promptly forgotten. Am I right? Such was being a Barker growing up. But then we built the present sanctuary, what you know is home for most of you. I've always enjoyed the stories you talk about. What a wonderful music program. Few of you remember the fact that when Oakmont Nike station went in over there, they had a big radar installation. Every Sunday morning, you turn that organ on in Bower Hill Church, almost immediately you'd hear as that dome spun around. Every time it pointed to the church, you got a terrible noise. And there were innumerable discussions between the United States Army and the members of Bower Hill Church dealing with radar. I had communicants class down in your lower hall there. For those of you growing up now in confirmation class, communicants class was very different. We sat around with leaders of the church who made us memorize the Apostles' Creed and Bible stories and a host of other things. I wonder how many of you remember the fact there was a jukebox down in that hall. To my dad's everlasting anger, we always enjoyed playing, well, you older ones remember the music from The Stripper. Yeah, da 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 da. Yeah, we managed to play that pretty often during worship. And he'd come home and say, "Who did that?" "Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Did it happen again?" Christmas Eve was a vivid memory for both my sister and I. I think we enjoyed seeing all the candles. One of the activities that occurred afterwards was all the clergy from the neighboring areas came to our house. It's the only time I ever saw my dad drink. They hosted parties for everybody and visited, and then he'd zoom back to the church for the 11 o'clock service. It wasn't until much later in years I discovered that's where our presents were hidden. In the furnace room. Yeah, smart man. That's why I always take a trip down there and look now. For some of you, Dad's memory is there. I'll close with this. After he died, it was his wishes that his ashes be scattered. Some were to go to Scotland, some to Cape Cod, some here to Bower Hill Church. Surreptitiously, Mom and my sister and I planted a vial outside your church, not in the Garden of Memories. It's for you to find sometime. But I often ask Mom, what part of him did you leave? We have a lot of very good memories. I was asked to comment about Fred. Fred and his ministry, particularly involving Dad, didn't come in. Your history says 69. It really started in earnest after that. Fred was Dad's mentor, good friend, buddy, companion, innumerable trips together. Dad did appear a number of times in cameos. I was Pipe Major Barker a couple of times on the show. Mom always reminded Ellen and I we were on the children's corner. Dad had been asked to come in and teach the Christmas story one time. Needless to say, my sister is the attentive one in the group. She sat raptly listening to my father tell the story of Mary and Joseph, and I sat picking my nose. Needless to say, I experienced another lesson in discipline. But the church has always occupied a key spot in our lives, in Mom and Dad's life. For that, we are eternally grateful for those memories. And I know Dad and Mom both treasured them deeply.
Make this quick since you've been so long-winded.
I'm not here tomorrow, so.
Like Sunday morning.
Yeah.
No, we do have a lot of really good memories. And I guess I think, when you talk about the potlucks and all that, all I can think of is tamale pie. Mom got this recipe from some magazine. For the next 2 years, we saw tamale pie. Every Friday night we'd come out and go up to the church. I think the one memory that I can remember as a child, well, I was in 7th grade at Jefferson Junior High School, and with Dad being across the street, you're at this age where your parents have the huge potential to really embarrass you. And it doesn't matter who the parent is, your parents can just embarrass you. So he was asked by the kindergarten to play his bagpipes. And so he actually, I give him credit because he asked me, I'm going to be doing this. When is the best time of day so that you don't have to hear me out the windows? And I thought that was really great. So I figured out my schedule. And I thought, okay, great, 4th period, I'm going to be in the back of the school. It's going to be great. So the day came. He said, okay, I'll be out there at such and such a time. I went into that 4th period class, and I was just so grateful. And all of a sudden it was, meh, 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 and the fire drill went off. I couldn't believe it. The entire school was in the faculty parking lot watching my father march back and forth across the horizon with these little kids behind him just bagpiping away, and everybody's, there's your dad. So, you know, that kind of sealed it for junior high for me. But I have to say, you know, we went home and he tried, and it was great, and he was known for the bagpipes. So, you know, in thinking about it, there are just so many memories, obviously, if that's your childhood, and you grow up like that. But church is family, but Bower Hill's home. So it's really nice to be home and to see, and like you were talking about, the DNA, it's still there for the love for community, the love for people, and that's, He will know us by our love. People will know that we know the Lord about our love, and I just bless you in the ways that you show that.
One other memory, I'm looking at the pictures here, the musical groups that are playing in your sanctuary. I want to take you back to 1967, I guess. Dad got the brilliant idea that he'd bring up some of the senior high kids, played guitars and drums. At this point, the Byrds' Turn, Turn, Turn was being played. They played that for an anthem, and boy, did it hit the fan. You have come a long, long way, folks, from that particular Sunday.
Thank you very much. You two are going to be to church tomorrow, right? Okay, good. Please. Okay. All right. Well, please have a chance to talk with either of them who are here, because the stories they can tell are absolutely fabulous. So next, I would like to bring up Teresa Child, who now I'm cutting her time down a whole lot. But no, I can't. Oh, she'll stop working with us, and we don't want that to happen. So here, Teresa, and Glenn, by the way, both of them.
Okay. Before I begin my presentation, I wanted to let everybody know the table on the right over here has a bunch of old things that if anybody, we have tons of, if anybody wants to take anything, you can. These are prints of the church. I'm not exactly sure what they came from. These are little wooden Bower Hills. I believe these came from the 50th anniversary. And then this is actually new. Bill Cadwell, one of our members, so Charlie Wright, we've said Helen Wright's name many times tonight. Her husband wrote a history of the first 17 years of Bower Hill. And Charlie wrote, or what Bill did was actually it was longer than that, it was the first 25 years. So he compiled all the information about the Bill Barker years and put them together, because Charlie kind of talked about stuff that was happening with his family and stuff, so he kind of pulled that information out. And we have hard copies, or we have like little pieces of paper that you can take and scan the QR code and read it online. So there's all that information. Okay, so we have welcome packets or welcome information in the Narthex for visitors. And Brian wrote a letter, it's been a while since we've updated, so he might not remember it, but where he talks about everybody has a story, and we hope that you might want to make Bower Hill part of your story. So this is the story of Bower Hill Community Church. In 1950, World War II was over and the United States was in a period of prosperity and optimism. Mount Lebanon was in the period of its greatest development. Along Bower Hill Road, there were open areas along both sides. There was no Jefferson School, no St. Clair Hospital, and no Kane Hospital. Only Grace's General Store and a few houses. But new streets were being opened and new houses built. During that same time, God used a lot of smoke, a tunnel through a hill, a building no longer needed at an army camp, a young seminary graduate, and a lot of love to create a church. The smoke was that which existed in the Pittsburgh area for many years. Wait, why am I don't know. So we'll just kind of, we're missing several slides, so we'll just read and see what happens. Okay, so, maybe I am right. Reverend Bill Barker worked hard to interest people in the proposed Bower Hill Community Church, going door to door, introducing himself and going into a sales pitch. His friendly manner quickly gained him a number of prospects. Those engaged in forming the church were encouraged to see the new building going up, painted white with a tiny steeple topped by a Celtic cross. A sign in front announced the first service would be held on September 10th, 1950. After that first service, enthusiasm grew, and on February 4th, 1951, the church was officially chartered. Bower Hill's first building, fondly thought of as the Little White Church, sat on the corner of Bower Hill Road and Parkview Drive. When the church was first formed, it was known that Mount Lebanon would require a permanent building to be built, and as the congregation grew, it became clear that additional space would be needed. In 1953, the planning for a new church began. That April, during a visit of Bill Barker with Mr. Claddy, whose first name I don't know if anybody does, but Mr. Claddy suggested the new church be built on part of his farm. Due to the anticipated growth, 2 wings were designed. The first wing would be built included the area from the handicapped entrance, Fellowship Hall, the classrooms that are now used by Montessori School, and the chapel. Until the second wing could be financed and built, Fellowship Hall would also serve as the sanctuary. Construction on the first wing began in 1954. A laying of the cornerstone ceremony was held on July 4th of that same year. Letters and other documents were put into the cornerstone so that the cornerstone would also serve as a time capsule. The first service in the new building was held on February 27th, 1955. There's some fun pictures. I believe that's the Christmas Eve service in the original Fellowship Hall Sanctuary. In 1956, the planning to fund the sanctuary began. Construction on this wing began in 1961 with the first service held on June 17, 1962. Just in case you were wondering what happened to the Little White Church, a stockbroker named Philip Wolters bought it on a whim. After that, he placed an ad in the press, putting it up for sale at a bargain to a deserving group. He was flooded with response forms from various organizations, including religious bodies, a dancing school, and an undertaker. Among the inquiries was one from the members of Forbes Road Union Church, located in Forbes Road, a tiny mining town close to Greensburg. 3 years prior, the deed to their church had been ruled invalid by the courts. Their congregation had dwindled to 32 members, and they badly needed a new church to keep their remaining members together. But they weren't an affluent congregation and worried they wouldn't be able to pay for a new building. Mr. Walters picked Forbes Road Union Church to get the Little White Church. And just like when it was shipped from Mississippi to Mount Lebanon, the church was pulled apart into sections and shipped to Forbes Road. The building is still there today, and tomorrow Brian will be telling us about his trip to visit that original building, our original Little White Church. In Bower Hill's early years, Bill Barker carried the pastoral work largely on his own. As the congregation expanded, various assistant and associate pastors came and left, including Doug McKenzie, James Garner, George Stewart, and Bruce Tennyson. In 1968, Bill Barker concluded his ministry at Bower Hill and joined the staff at the Pittsburgh Theological Institute. When Bill Barker departed, Associate Pastor George Stewart was the only remaining assistant pastor. George did not wish to be considered for the senior pastor position, so Ray Howes was hired as our second senior pastor. Gail Buckwalter, who had just completed seminary training, was ordained and became the Christian education pastor. And that actually happened a little bit before Howes came in. George and Gail kept the church running until January 1969, when Roy Howes became the senior pastor. The relationship between Bower Hill and Roy was contentious. Gail Buckwalter resigned in 1969, and in August of that same year, Roy left to take a position at the United Presbyterian Church of Boise, Ohio. After Roy Howes left, Associate Pastor George Stewart again became the only pastor on staff. George kept things running until September 1969, when James Fawcett became interim pastor. In June 1970, George resigned to take a position at a church in Tulsa, Oklahoma. That same month, James Fawcett also resigned as a new senior pastor had been selected. In 1970, Roberto Beto Delgado became Bower Hill's third senior pastor. At first, Beto Delgado carried the pastoral load alone. That changed in June 1971 when Keith D. Myers, who I believe it was Marge McKee's daughter said, married her, joined the staff as assistant pastor, and a year later was named associate pastor. After Dean's departure in August 1975, Terry Wimberly arrived in October 1976 to serve as assistant pastor, though his ministry here was brief and concluded in August 1977. Less than a year later, in April 1978, Beto Delgado also resigned, bringing another chapter in Bower Hill's pastoral ministry to a close. In 1977, Robert Stevens was appointed interim pastor and served as the church's sole pastor during that transitional period. He remained in that role until September 1978, when Bower Hill welcomed its new senior pastor. William Philippi became Bower Hill's fourth senior pastor in 1978. The following May, Nancy Gorsuch joined the staff as assistant pastor. Then in September 1982, Bill stepped away from Bower Hill to devote a year to study, writing, and discerning his next direction in ministry. 1982, Robert Stevens returned as interim pastor. During that time, Nancy Gorsuch served alongside him in pastoral ministry. Robert remained in this role until June 1983, when he stepped down after the new senior pastor has been selected. And that person is in this room. When Robert Heppenstall began his ministry as Bower Hill's fifth pastor in 1983, Nancy Gorsuch was serving alongside him as assistant pastor. After Nancy left, Dan Rift joined the staff. in September 1986 and served until August 1988. Following month, Nancy Keenan came on board as associate minister. Then, in April 1982, Bob Heppenstall left Bower Hill to accept a call to accept a call to the First Church of Christ Congregational in Hartford, Connecticut. Then we have Cal Wilson began serving as interim pastor in July of 1992. When Cal began his tenure, he was supported by Tracy Keenan. 2 months into his service, he was asked whether he would consider becoming the senior pastor, but presbytery rules prevented that. In January 1984, he accepted a call at another Presbyterian church after a new senior pastor had been approved. In February 1994, Jock Hodges became Bower Hill's 6th senior pastor. Shortly after Jock began his ministry, Tracy left for other pursuits. In January 1999, David Ensign joined the staff. And then in August 2000, Jack resigned to accept a call with the Synod of the Pacific as Associate Synod Executive and to serve as General Presbyter and Head of Staff of the Cascades Presbytery. Then we have Beverly James, who began serving as interim pastor from September 2000 through March 2002. David Ensign left in March of 2001. Then we have Leonard and Lori, who served as co-pastors, our husband and wife team. In 2008, Leonard resigned to begin a new direction in ministry, and Cal Wilson was called once again to serve as interim pastor. The following year, Lori also left Bower Hill to pursue new opportunities. Cal left shortly before Brian Snyder was hired to serve as Bower Hill's 8th and current senior pastor. For much of that time, Fred Leisure has been assisting Brian as an unpaid parish associate. Early on, the church became a center of social life for many families. The Strawberry Festival began as a fundraiser in 1951, and by 1965 was drawing more than 600 attendees. Maybe we can break that record tomorrow. Family night dinners followed in 1959, and in 1986, George Stewart launched the now infamous Saturday Night Dances for Youth. Though centered on Mount Lebanon teens, the dances drew young people from as far away as Bridgeville. In fact, you hear a little giggle back there, some of the current members of First Baptist Church of Bridgeville still remember attending our dances. The next year, the Interfaith Dinner with Temple Emmanuel brought 200 people together, and so that really was kind of like the first kind of like shin service. Since then, countless gatherings from potlucks and talent shows to Steeler watch parties and Halloween celebrations have helped shape the warm and welcoming community life at Bower Hill. Music has always been an important part of church life at Bower Hill, with the choir serving as the heart of its music ministry. At the height of its membership, the choir presented concerts that were accompanied by members of the Pittsburgh Symphony and even recorded. A handbell choir was also formed and continued to play on a regular basis. During the COVID years, the choir adapted by becoming a virtual choir. Members recorded their voices from home while the music director, Ann Smith, recorded the organ, and the parts were brought together to create each virtual performance. Special music programs have enriched the life of the church throughout the years. More recently, the youth of the congregation have shared their music gifts through the Bower Hill Phil, Week-long programs such as Strings Attached and Music with a Twist have welcomed the whole community, while groups like the Three Rivers Ringers have performed regularly at the church. A Voices of Unity concert was also held outdoors in partnership with other churches. Programs for children and youth, Sunday school, youth group, and vacation Bible school among them, have long been an important life at Bower Hill from the very beginning. The first work trip may have taken place in 1962 when 6 young people spent 6 weeks in Puerto Rico with the Barker family. Sorry, lost my spot. Helping with a variety of projects. More than 60 years later, Puerto Rico again became the destination for the church's 2023 work trip. Mission has always been at the heart of Bower Hill. A benevolent fund was established as early as 1953 with donations supporting organizations such as the International Christian University in Japan and a chaplaincy program. The church continues to dedicate a substantial portion of its budget to mission and outreach. Here are a few examples of how members of the congregation have supported local mission projects. The church began supplying meals to St. Joseph's Men's Shelter in 1985. Over the years, the Feed My Sheep program has been delivering meals to members as needed. Members have packed food boxes at the Greater Pittsburgh Food Bank and helped distribute fresh produce through the Produce to People program. Members have volunteered in a reading program for second graders at the Presbyterian Church of Mount Washington and have tutored students at Casa San Jose. Greengrocers has been a part of Bower Hill's mission ministry for more than 25 years. Each Sunday, volunteers collect excess food from Giant Eagle and deliver it to Shim. The Shim Garden began in 2011 as a fenced, raised bed garden. Bower Hill has become especially known for growing a variety of peppers and an expanded garden on the side of the front, garden on the side of the front lawn is planned for 2026. Bower Hill began participating as a host church for Family Promise in 2013. Roughly every other month, the church hosted up to 4 families overnight. The program's goal was to help families experiencing homelessness to find stable housing, employment, and support. For many years, the Eco Justice team has spearheaded programs that both educate and inspire action in caring for the environment. Bower Hill collects and delivers food each month to the Unity Food Pantry. As part of its commitment as a Matthew 25 church, Bower Hill spearheaded a Southwestern Pennsylvania campaign to reduce medical debt. In 2025, more than $2 million in debt was retired. As early as 1962, the church approved a resolution supporting the General Assembly's call for non-segregated churches. To put that commitment into practice, a membership exchange program began in 1963. 3 families, the Ketchums, the Davises, and the Wolfords, transferred their membership for 1 year to Goodwill Church on the north side and Friendship Community Church in the Hill District, while 2 African American families transferred their membership to Bower Hill. The program was intended to strengthen race relations. During that same period, the church participated in many efforts addressing racial justice, including Bill Barker's support of the March in Selma, Alabama in 1965. In 1967, the South Hills Village Ministry began with support from multiple South Hills congregations, and that actually became Shim. In 1957, Bower Hill sponsored the Van Holtens, a Dutch family, as well as 3 Hungarian men who had emigrated because of the crisis in Hungary. In 1975, the church supported a Vietnamese family. Through Shim and CASA, members have participated in teaching, mentoring, providing garden produce, and offering other forms of service to the immigrant community. The church has also responded when natural disasters created urgent needs. In 1985, Bower Hill provided clothing for flood repair through Bethel Presbyterian in Berkeley, West Virginia. One of the major mission responses of that area came after Hurricane Andrew. Church members contributed $2,000 and assembled 1,000 kits for the students of Leisure City Elementary School in Florida. In response to Hurricane Katrina, we organized, collected, and delivered 12,500 pounds of food to Orchard Springs, Mississippi, along with other relief efforts. Bower Hill's mission work has not stopped at home, but has also reached across the world. Our project to sponsor Irish children during the summer of 1985 won first place for the Synod Peacemaking activity. Hekima Place, a Kenyan boarding school founded in 2005, has been supported by members of the church, both financially and through direct personal involvement. Since the beginning of 2011, church members have been involved in the Haiti Water Project, where church members were trained for the installation of water systems, organized numerous fundraisers, sent teams to Haiti, and helped install those systems, 6 of those water treatment systems. We continue to support the maintenance of those systems. From its earliest day, Bower Hill shared its building with community groups. In 1953, Boy Scout Troop 28 and Cub Scout Pack 28 became affiliated with the church. Between 1953 and 1955, Temple Emmanuel used the church for meetings and worship services before moving into its new building. As early as 1964, a group working to translate the Old Testament into Braille was given space in the church for its work. They became known as the Bower Hill Braillists and produced countless Braille books that were shipped to people across the country. In 2017, advances in technology led them to close that chapter of their ministry. In 1975, the local chapter of ARP began meeting monthly in Fellowship Hall, a tradition that continued for many years. The Pittsburgh chapter of Compassionate Friends, a group that supports those grieving the loss of children and grandchildren, has held its monthly meetings and special events at the church since 2003. From 2004 to 2017, Jock, a social agency of Allegheny County, used rooms in Fellowship Hall to provide services for young children. In 2018, after a devastating flood in Bridgeville left its church unusable, First Baptist Church of Bridgeville began worshiping in Bower Hills Chapel. It continues to do so today, and over time, the two congregations have shared combined services and events. In 2021, Mount Lebanon Montessori School and Academy began leasing the rooms in the Fellowship Hall wing that had been vacated by Dark. From the Little White Church on Bower Hill Road to the congregation we are today, the story of Bower Hill is one of faith planted, nurtured, and shared across generations. What began with vision, determination, and trust has grown into a community marked by worship, service, fellowship, and love. As we remember the people and moments that brought us here, we do so with gratitude for the past and with hope for the future, confident that God is still writing the next chapter of Bower Hill's story. And manage not to get carried away, to get hooked away.
All right. I didn't get any hooked up. All right.
Right now, I would like Alan Holfelder to come up for a minute, and he's always nice and short. And then this time, what he's going to talk to you, I hope, is not short. So, Alan.
Thanks, Susan. As a part of our 75th anniversary celebration, we decided that we would have a capital campaign to both celebrate our past, but also looking towards the future of what Bower Hill can become. And we chose the Let Our Light Shine as our sort of motto for the campaign and for this anniversary celebration. One, because the windows needed replaced again. And so it seemed appropriate about letting light shine into our sanctuary. But it was also one about the city set on the hill, and both celebrating the light that's come into our community from Bower Hill over the past 75 years, but also looking to, what are we going to be doing in the future, and how can our light continue to shine. So I'm here to announce tonight sort of the results of our campaign. And if I had to pick one word to describe how the campaign has gone, I'd like to quote one of our former ministers by saying that the campaign was fantastic. So our campaign was a little bit different than campaigns that have gone in the past, in that 25% of our campaign was actually going to go to mission. And so it really reflected our interest in reaching out to the community and showing how that we can be a light in our community for others. Our campaign goal was $500,000, and I'm pleased to announce tonight that our pledges for the campaign totaled $610,434. Continually amazed by the generosity of this congregation and just the support of the things that we're doing in our congregation and how important they are, and that people can be so generous to support the missions that we do. In addition to what was pledged by members of the congregation, we also received an $8,077 grant from the Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Association to help with some of the masonry projects of the church. We received a $1,000 grant from Grow Pittsburgh to help with the construction of our shim garden, and we also received $5,000 from the Presbytery in support of our speaker series that just ended this week. So in total, we ended up with $624,511.65. I just want to thank everybody here for their outpouring of support for this, and we're really looking forward to what this campaign can do, not only for our facility and the ministries that go on there, but for the mission work that we're also interested in. So thank you.
Thank you. Wow, we didn't know that number until this evening. So this is amazing, and when I went to say, I'm afraid I'm going over my budget for this, he says, oh, don't worry. But he didn't help had I known. Anyway, I would like to introduce my favorite guy, and he's going to talk to you about, I don't know, he wouldn't tell me. So this is Dave Hicks.
This will be very short, as I am. But as somebody said, I'm the longest living senior continuous member of Bower Hill Church. I've been here from the beginning. In the military, they would call me a lifer. But it's been a wonderful, wonderful place to worship, mainly because of all of you and the people at Bower Hill Church. I spoke a little bit a couple weeks ago in the fellowship hall and said I thought our strength was mission. I misspoke. Our strength is all the people of this church. Our focus is mission. And thinking about the future, the information we just got from Alan is going to help as we move forward. I see the future of Bower Hill Church doing more of what we're doing now, and that is reaching out to the community, to the world, and helping people. That's what we're here for. All of us, I think, want to make a difference, want to make a positive impact on the people around us. People who are less fortunate than we are. That's where I see Bower Hill Church going in the future. One item or one mission outreach project that we had that was mentioned by Teresa is the Green Grocers of Bower Hill. I want to mention that real quickly. I'm looking at Lynn Saranac. She's nodding her head. Lynn's mom started that program 35 years ago, Lynn. Green Grocers. We collect on Sunday, every Sunday, we collect members of the church and some people who are not members of the church who have volunteered. Collect groceries, produce from Giant Eagle and deliver it. We're now delivering to Shim. And my guess is, over the course of this, we have delivered to Shim, before that Miriam's house, the women's shelter downtown, 150 tons of produce that was needed by other people that otherwise would have gone into a landfill. So that program is really, really important. It's not well known fact by most of us. And here's my request. We need another volunteer. Takes about an hour at the most, one Sunday a month, and I need somebody to volunteer.
SUV.
Pardon?
Should have an SUV.
Yeah, you need to have an SUV, that's true. But anyway, if you're interested, you can do it. Please get in touch with me, I would appreciate it. Okay. I know where you live. And anyway, that outreach to the community, doing what we're supposed to be doing, is where I see Bower Hill going in the future. It's where we've been, we're going to continue to do that. And by the way, I couldn't think of a better place to be to do that. Thank you.
Okay, little introduction. Brian, it's your turn. It's my turn.
The problem with going last is that somebody has already said everything you intended to say. I do want to say a few things, and my wife has just asked if she could say a few things.
Yes.
Do you want to go before me?
Yeah.
She's going to keep it real brief. Yes, this is Michelle Snyder.
Thank you.
Brian never gives the microphone over. Thank you for that. Yeah. So, I'm Michelle Snyder. Some of you have met, some of you haven't. I was just listening to Teresa talk about the history and all the stuff that's happened and all the mission and First Baptist. It's amazing. And we've been here a really long time, like 16 years. Yeah, 16 years. And Dave says like the future is mission, and that's like right. Go into all the world, preach the gospel, feed the poor, all this stuff. But I have a story about Bower Hill that I'm a church consultant. I go around the country. That's why you don't see me very much on Sundays, because I'm in, I don't know, 100 churches a year talking about how to be church in the world. But there's a Bower Hill story that I tell, and I just wanted to tell it to you. And that is that when we got here, the first, I don't know, a couple years, we did a women's retreat. Anybody at those early women's retreats, right? We brought them back because they had existed for a long, long time. And then they didn't exist, and so we started doing these women's retreats. And I'm a seminary graduate. I have a master's in divinity. I have fought with many a PhD about infant baptism and what that means and whether we should do it or whether we shouldn't and all that. But we were at this women's retreat, and I can't name everybody that was there, but I'm sure that it was Mary Good, and I'm sure that it was Dorinda, and I'm sure that it was Kiri, and it was Kirsten, because we were sitting around drinking wine, of course, the night that we got there. And I remember it was the 50 or 60 somethings, and Betsy was there in that room at that time. Pat was there, telling Kiri and Kirsten about their moms, because they had been at these women's retreats generations before. They were telling funny stories about their moms and how faithful their moms had been and how funny their moms had been, and practical jokes. And if you don't know, Carrie and Kirsten's moms died. And so here are these young women hanging out with their moms' friends, hearing stories about their moms for times that when they weren't there. And I remember thinking, these are women who stood at the baptisms of these young girls and promised to raise them in the faith. And here they are, 30 years later, when their moms aren't here anymore, keeping that promise to raise their children in the faith. And what I say to people all over the country is that, yeah, we want your programs, and yeah, we want your ministries, and yeah, we want your outreaches, but why do we need young people in the church? Why do we need older folks in the church? Why do we need to do this thing? Because I need you to care about my babies, because someday I might not be here, and I need you to help me raise them in the faith. And I think that Bower Hill is the best example that I've ever seen in my whole life of what that looks like in real time. So, 75 years of standing on the shoulders of ancestors and carrying the torch and all that, but thanks for loving each other's babies. And my babies too.
Okay, I'm going to put it in the holder, and I'm going to be kind of brief at this point. You know, my philosophy when I came to Bower Hill almost 16 years ago was learn their story, tell them their story. I think I learned an exaggerated version of your story that might not have been perfectly accurate, but I told it anyway. And the story I told was this. In the 60s, the pastor of Bower Hill Church felt called to be more than just a neighborhood pastor and to care about the world and to get involved in the civil rights movement, and that half the church up and left. I don't know that it was fully half the church. So I told you it wasn't accurate, but it was the way I heard the story. And I would always tell this story, and people would say to me, "Oh, Brian, don't let people get a big head. Stop bragging about us. Nobody wants to hear all these nice stories about us." But I think tonight is the night to tell the nice stories and the congratulations, because Bower Hill really is an exceptional church. I have seen many churches tear apart good pastors and many pastors tear apart good churches. We've had none of that here that I have seen. I have not seen any kind of bitterness or fighting or hatred in this church as I have seen in some other churches. And so I'm really grateful for that. When Kiri Rising called me, I think it was in the spring of 2010, and said, "Hey, I'm from Bower Hill Church's PNC, Pastor Nominating Committee, and we would like you to apply for our church." My first thought was, Mount Lebanon? No. Those people are snobs. Those people are upper middle class. I don't want to go to Mount Lebanon. They won't like me in Mount Lebanon. I'm Gen X. I'm from Oil City. They will not like me there. But we took a chance on it and have been very happy. And so, Kiri, for that telephone conversation long ago, I thank you, though I think you did call me at my church office for my other church.
She called the house, I ran across the driveway.
Oh, okay. Yeah. My wife is saying she called the house and she ran across the driveway to tell me. Okay. It's been almost 16 years ago. I am right after Bill Barker, who lasted 17 years in longevity at Bower Hill Church. But part of that too was when I came down to try out at Bower Hill, I met Cal Wilson, and he was so grand and so regal and very kind and very welcoming. But I thought, Bower Hill is not going to like me. But Bower Hill likes everybody. Bower Hill loves everybody, and so I'm grateful for that, and I have stayed these 16 years. I want to talk about a few people who have not been mentioned yet. I want to talk about Jack Brannon and Marion Brannon. I was told that Jack Brannon used to pound his watch on the pew in front of him if the pastor preaching went overtime. I have never gone overtime. Well, maybe in recent years. But back in those days, I had such bad stage fright that I didn't. He called the office after my first week at Bower Hill. He called the office every Monday, regardless, to report on how many had died in Iraq. And he always said, I consider this an issue of faith. You are my community of faith. I do not know what you do with this information, but I am just passing it along. It was his way of praying, really. He was praying about Iraq by calling his church. But he told me once, the one time he called me, he was very happy to talk to the secretary most of the time. The one time he called me, he said, Brian, I agree with everything you say, and if I ever disagree, I will call you again. And his sweet wife, Marion, after he died, blossomed like a flower. She really, she started learning French. She started babysitting my children in the nursing home. And I was embarrassed by that. I thought people would think we were taking advantage of this little old lady in the nursing home. My children loved Marion Brannon, and she loved them. And she tried to teach them French in the nursing home. I'm grateful for her. Dave and Nancy Green, how have their names not come up yet? Nancy Green is doing great. She's as sharp as a tack, and she's every bit as spirited and funny and wise as she always was. Dave unfortunately died during the pandemic. Otherwise, he would have had an enormous funeral. Everybody from Presbytery would have been there because he was the moderator of Presbytery at one time. And we had a very small funeral for him in the Memorial Garden. But I'll never forget Dave. You know, with his booming voice. He lectured once at the Chautauqua Institution for Raphael Warnock was preaching. And he read the scriptural text very much as Dave read every Easter. And Raphael Warnock, this famous preacher, got up and said, Dave, I feel like I'm on an episode of Game of Thrones. Dave was the only parishioner ever in session meetings who called me Mr. Moderator. Mr. Moderator. Finally, I want to mention Pat Jacobs. Pat Jacobs was a treasure. She really was. There was a point at which we were tight on money and our youth director needed some special training. It cost $2,000. We could not figure out who was going to pay that money. And Pat said, oh, I'll just pay it. And she did, out of her own pocket. And that's the kind of generosity that you see at Bower Hill Church. And I am grateful for that. I don't think we all know what a special church you are. And so, since I am tooting our horn tonight, and since I am bragging on you, thank you. Thank you for 16 good years so far. And thank you for being who you are. And that DNA, I'm glad you brought that up. For that DNA. It's like there's a story about how somebody can enter a room and start a conversation. And they set certain parameters around that conversation of how we treat people, how we speak to people, and even when that person slips out of the room and other people slip in and join the conversation goes on in the same tenor with respect and with dignity and with love. And I think that's what Bill Barker did. I think he insisted that we would be a place where people would treat each other right. And that is what we have done. And I am grateful for that. Thank you. Okay, now that you're 75 years old, I think I can ask you this question. I hesitated to talk to you about this when you were younger, but now that you're 75. Who sent me this shirt? It says The Sermonator. This shirt arrived in 2011. It's been sitting in a drawer ever since, and we were cleaning out, and I just remembered it. I have never once worn it. I think it might have been Keith Mason, and he's long gone. It wasn't you, Susan?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, if you don't want to admit it in this room, you can admit it to me afterward. Thank you for being here tonight. Please come tomorrow. at 9:30 to Bower Hill Church. We are going to continue this experience as a worship experience, followed by a time of fellowship at the Strawberry Festival. And each of our returning pastors is going to preach a tiny sermonette tomorrow morning. And so please do come back for that, and let us stand and receive the benediction. God of life, we give you thanks for each other. We give you thanks for this evening that we have shared, and we give you thanks for these 75 years that it represents. Oh God, be with us in the years ahead. Guide us and keep us faithful to our unique calling and identity as your church in this place. In Christ we pray. The Lord bless you, the Lord keep you, the Lord make their face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up their countenance upon you and give you peace in Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Brian. I only have to speak for about 10 more minutes. I'm kidding. I have a couple of quick thank yous I have to do that I did not before. And number one was Carl, who just came up here. And Carl said that if you would like to take the centerpieces, not the tall ones, because we're taking those to the church, but Carl arranged all of those. Not only is he a minister, but he also is a flower guy. And he did that for us, and we thank you, Carl, very much. Also, a big thank you to Lynn Saranac for doing the speaker series we had, which was wonderful. It turned out so well. I love it. I think we should do it again. And a big, big thank you that we haven't said anything about is Jim Burke, who got this whole ball rolling with a celebration of it. He told us we should have started 2 years ago, so he was a little angry about that. But he got over it. But thank you, Jim. And thank all of you for being here, and see you in church tomorrow, because I'm looking for everybody, okay? Have a good evening. Bye.